Welcome back, everyone, to the Dep Dive. You guys have sent in some seriously cool stuff on bioprinting and synthetic biology.
Yeah, it is pretty wild
It's
stuff.
like it's right out of science fiction. 3D printing organs, custom design organisms, all this is becoming reality now.
It really is amazing, and I think it offers some really incredible solutions to some of the biggest problems we're facing.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, think about things like organ shortages right now and how many people are on waiting lists or environmental pollution.
Yeah.
And these fields offer potential solutions to those problems. Really groundbreaking stuff.
Okay, so let's dive into it then. One of the articles mentioned bioprinting, like literally creating organs layer by layer. And they said they're using the patient's own cells. How does that even work?
So basically, imagine a specialized 3D printer, but instead of plastic or metal, it uses what's called bioink.
Bioink.
Yeah, it's like a gel that's made of living cells and some kind of supporting structure.
Wow.
And this bioink gets deposited layer by layer, kind of like a regular 3D printer. But this time it's following a blueprint based on the patient's own anatomy.
So you're telling me they can like scan your body and print out a new organ that perfectly matches you?
That's the goal.
Hmm.
The cells in that ink actually grow and fuse together and eventually form a functional organ.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet for like every organ, but
So what kind of organs can they print now?
researchers have been able to bioprint simpler tissues like skin and cartilage.
Okay.
And they're working their way up to more complex stuff like kidneys, even hearts.
Kidneys, hearts, that's incredible.
Yeah, there are still challenges, of course, like replicating the blood vessels, making sure these organs actually work long term.
Right, so it's not quite ready for everyone just yet?
Not quite, but the potential is definitely there. Just imagine no more waiting lists for transplants, no more worrying about organ rejection.
Yeah, that would be game-changing for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Another article talked about synthetic biology, and they said it's like genetic engineering on steroids.
Yeah, I saw that one. It's a good way to put it.
What does that even mean?
So with genetic engineering, you're usually just tweaking existing genes, right?
Right.
But synthetic biology, it takes it further. You're designing and building entirely new biological systems, like redesigning organisms from the ground up to do specific tasks.
Okay, so you're not like creating life from scratch, but you're more like re-engineering what's already there.
Exactly. It's about taking those building blocks of life and using them to create custom-made solutions for our problems.
Like what kind of problems? Give me an example.
Scientists are already engineering microbes that can produce biofuels.
Really?
Yeah, and they're cleaning up environmental pollutants, even manufacturing life-saving drugs.
To like tiny little bacteria factories.
It's kind of like that.
That's wild. No wonder they called it genetic engineering on steroids.
Yeah, it is a field with massive potential for sure.
I'm starting to see why you said these technologies have the potential to solve some of humanity's biggest challenges.
Mm-hmm.
There was this one article that really caught my eye talking about using synthetic biology to like eat plastic pollution.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
We've all seen those pictures of like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and all that plastic in the ocean. It's terrifying.
Absolutely. Plastic pollution is a major global crisis.
So how can synthetic biology even help with that?
So researchers are actually developing microbes that can break down different types of plastic and turn them into harmless byproducts.
Wait, so these tiny little bacteria can eat plastic?
That's the idea.
That's insane.
Yeah, it could revolutionize how we deal with waste.
Yeah.
Imagine cleaning up all that plastic that's accumulated in the environment.
That would be amazing. It's like using biology to fix a problem that we created with technology.
Yeah, in a way, it is.
But you know, as exciting as all of this sounds,
Yeah.
I can't help but think there must be some concerns about these technologies, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these technologies are so powerful and they raise some really complex ethical and philosophical questions.
Or like what kind of questions?
Well, some people worry about unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Like, well, what if something goes wrong?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's that whole debate about playing God.
Rain God.
Yeah, like, are we messing with things that we shouldn't be? And then there's the issue of commodifying life.
Commodifying life, what does that even mean?
Well, it raises questions about ownership and control. Like, if we can create living tissues, organisms in a lab, who owns them? Can they be patented? Does life just become another product to be bought and sold?
Those are some seriously deep questions. I mean, it's like we're blurring the lines between nature and technology.
We are. And the implications are huge for all of us.
Yeah, there was this one article that talked about biopiracy, like companies exploiting genetic resources from developing countries?
Right, and that's a real threat we need to be aware of. We have to make sure that these technologies benefit all of humanity, not just the people who can afford to exploit them.
Absolutely. It sounds like there are some serious benefits, but also some serious risks to consider.
Definitely. There's a lot to unpack here.
One of the articles used a phrase that kind of stuck with me. It said heuristics of fear when talking about synthetic biology.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It's an interesting concept.
What do they even mean by that?
Basically, a way of thinking that urges us to consider the worst case scenarios, to be cautious and humble about how we manipulate life.
So it's not about being totally afraid of these technologies, but more about being realistic about the risks involved.
Exactly. It's about balancing our excitement about what's possible with a good dose of caution and a commitment to doing things responsibly.
Makes sense. Like not getting so caught up in the hype that we forget about the potential downsides.
Right. We need to be thinking about the consequences of our actions,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about something as powerful as manipulating life itself.
It's a lot to think about, but I think it's important that we have these conversations.
I agree. The more we talk about these issues, the better prepared we'll be to navigate this new world that we're creating.
Okay, so we've got this whole ethical minefield to navigate, but let's step back for a minute and look at it from a different perspective.
Okay.
One of the articles talked about the utilitarian view, which says these advancements are justifiable if they maximize overall well-being.
Right, the classic utilitarian argument.
But how do you even measure something like that? Like what counts as well-being?
That's a really tough question. I mean, utilitarianism often focuses on outcomes that you can quantify, like how many lives are saved, how many diseases are cured.
Right, the numbers.
Exactly. But when you're talking about something as complex as life itself, how do you account for the things you can't measure? Like the value of biodiversity or the potential damage to ecosystems.
Yeah, it seems like it would be almost impossible to weigh all those factors against each other.
It is. And that's why it's so important to have these open and honest conversations about what we value, what risks we're willing to take, and what kind of future we want to create.
It feels like we're kind of stepping into uncharted territory here.
In a lot of ways, we are. And that's why it's more important than ever to bring everyone to the table. Scientists, ethicists, policymakers, the public. We need to be having these tough conversations and figure out some guidelines for how to move forward responsibly.
So speaking of guidelines, what's the situation right now with regulations? Are there laws in place for all this bioprinting and the synthetic biology stuff?
Well, the regulatory landscape is definitely still evolving. It's kind of struggling to keep up with how fast these fields are moving.
So like the laws are behind the technology.
Exactly. There are some frameworks in place for things like genetic engineering and biosafety, but they weren't really designed with bioprinting and synthetic biology in mind.
So there's kind of a gap there.
Yeah, there is. And that creates a lot of uncertainty for researchers, for companies, for policymakers. We need clearer, more adaptable regulations that can promote innovation while also addressing all these ethical and societal concerns we've been talking about.
It's like walking a tightrope. You want to encourage scientific progress, but also protect the public interest.
It is. It's a balancing act, for sure.
And speaking of protecting the public, one area where regulation seems super important is preventing these technologies from being misused, right? Like the articles mentioned bioweapons and stuff.
Absolutely. The potential for bioweapons is a very real concern. It's what we call the dual-use dilemma. How do you prevent something designed for good from being used for harm?
That's a tough one. I mean, how do you stop bad actors without stifling all the good research that's going on?
It is. It requires a lot of thought, a lot of international cooperation, and a real commitment to ethical principles.
It's a lot to juggle. On the one hand, we want to encourage innovation and see what these technologies can do, but on the other hand, we have to be realistic about the risks.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot where we can promote responsible innovation while also mitigating the risks.
So, what's the answer? How do we do that?
Well, there's no easy answer. It's going to require ongoing dialogue, international collaboration, and a shared commitment to using these powerful technologies for good.
It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done, both in terms of developing the technologies themselves and figuring out the ethical and regulatory side of things.
There is, but it's important work. The decisions we make now will have a huge impact on the future, for all of us.
It's both exciting and kind of scary to think about the possibilities and the responsibility that comes with them.
Yeah, it is. But I think it's important to remember that the future isn't set in stone. It's something we create through the choices we make today.
So we have a chance to shape the future of these technologies.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in ensuring that they're used for the benefit of humanity and the planet.
Well, that's a good note to end on. We've talked a lot about the potential risks and ethical concerns, but next time, let's flip the script and focus on the potential benefits. Like, how can these technologies actually improve our lives?
Sounds good. I think there are some truly amazing possibilities to explore.
I agree. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back after the break.
See you then.
So we were talking about the potential benefits of bioprinting and synthetic biology.
Yes, some really incredible stuff.
It's like we could be on the verge of a whole new era of medicine and even environmental cleanup.
Absolutely. The applications are vast.
Well, we talked about bioprinting organs.
Uh-huh.
Imagine if we could eliminate organ transplant waiting lists altogether.
It would be revolutionary. No more waiting for a match. No more worrying about rejection.
And with synthetic biology, we could even see personalized medicine becoming a reality.
Exactly. Treatments tailored to your specific genetic makeup. Imagine that.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It's becoming reality.
Mhm.
And beyond medicine, think about the environmental applications.
Right.
We already talked about microbes that can break down plastic, but synthetic biology could also help us clean up oil spills, detoxify contaminated soil, even capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
So we're not just talking about treating diseases, we're talking about healing the planet itself.
We are. It's about using these technologies to address some of the biggest challenges facing humanity and the natural world.
It's incredible to think about the possibilities.
It is. It's a new era of scientific innovation, and it's up to us to ensure that we use these powerful tools wisely.
You know, it's both exciting and a little bit daunting to think about the responsibility that comes with all of this.
I agree. We need to be mindful of the potential downsides, the ethical considerations, the societal impact.
Absolutely. We can't just focus on the shiny new tech without considering the consequences.
Right. It's about finding that balance between progress and responsibility.
So how do we do that? How do we make sure these technologies are used for good and don't end up creating more problems than they solve?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I think it starts with having open and honest conversations, like the one we're having right now.
Yeah, bringing different perspectives to the table.
Exactly. Scientists, ethicists, policymakers, the public, we all need to be involved in shaping the future of these technologies.
And it's not just a national conversation, it needs to be global.
Absolutely. We need international cooperation, shared guidelines, a global commitment to using these technologies ethically and responsibly.
It's a tall order, but it seems essential if we want to harness the power of bioprinting and synthetic biology for the benefit of all humankind.
I agree. The decisions we make now will have a profound impact on the future of our planet and the future of life itself.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is, but it's also an incredible opportunity. We have the chance to shape the future, to use these technologies to create a better world for ourselves and for generations to come.
So what's the next step? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first step is to keep talking, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions. The more we understand about these technologies, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about their development and use.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly, and it's a journey we need to take together.
So let's keep the conversation going. What are some of the specific challenges we need to address?
Well, one of the big ones is regulation. The current regulatory landscape is struggling to keep up with the rapid pace of innovation.
Right, we talked about that earlier. The laws are lagging behind the technology.
Yeah, and that creates uncertainty, which can stifle progress. We need clear, adaptable guidelines that can foster innovation while also addressing the ethical and societal concerns we've been discussing.
So we need to strike that balance between encouraging progress and preventing harm.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where we can promote responsible innovation without stifling scientific advancement.
And how do we make sure these technologies benefit everyone, not just a privileged few?
That's another critical question.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful of the potential for these technologies to exacerbate existing inequalities.
Right. We don't want to create a world where only the wealthy have access to life-saving treatments or environmental solutions.
Exactly. We need to ensure equitable access, global cooperation, and a commitment to using these technologies for the benefit of all humankind, not just a select few.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting. We're on the cusp of a new era, an era with the potential to transform our world in profound ways.
And we have the power to shape that future.
We do. The choices we make today will determine what that future looks like. So let's choose wisely.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and let's work together to create a future where bioprinting and synthetic biology are used for the good of all.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into bioprinting and synthetic biology.
Yeah, it's been great.
We've covered so much, from the tech itself to the ethical dilemmas, the potential societal impacts, everything.
It's a lot to unpack for sure.
It is. So what stands out to you as the most significant takeaway from all this?
I think for me, it's the realization that we're at like a pivotal point in human history right now. These technologies could reshape our world in ways we can't even imagine yet.
Yeah.
And the choices we're making today are going to have huge consequences down the road.
I totally agree. It's both super exciting and a little terrifying, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, we have all this power, but also this huge responsibility to use it wisely.
Exactly.
And I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be making sure that these technologies benefit everyone, not just a select few.
Right. We need to be very mindful of how these advancements could widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Like, we don't want to create a world where only the wealthy have access to life-saving treatments or environmental solutions.
Exactly. We need to ensure equitable access, global cooperation, a commitment to using these technologies for the benefit of all humankind, not just a privileged few.
Which brings us to global governance, I guess. How do we even begin to ensure international cooperation and set ethical guidelines that everyone respects?
It's a massive challenge, for sure. And it'll require a level of collaboration that we haven't really seen before. We need to foster dialogue, build consensus, and come up with international agreements that promote responsible innovation, while also addressing concerns about things like biopiracy, bioweapons, all those potential risks.
It's a tall order, but it seems absolutely crucial if we want to truly harness the power of these technologies for the good of everyone on the planet.
It is. It is crucial. The decisions we make now, today, are going to shape the future of life itself.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, is there a final thought-provoking question you want to leave our listeners with, something for them to chew on?
Okay, here's one. If we can redesign life, what does it mean to be human?
Whoa.
As we gain more and more control over the building blocks of life, we need to really reflect on our values, our responsibilities, and our place in the natural world. The choices we make will literally shape the future of life itself.
That is a powerful question, and one that I think will stay with us long after this conversation is over.
I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's been a truly enlightening conversation.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in to The Deep Dive. Keep those questions coming, keep exploring these fascinating topics, and let's all work together to create a future where technology serves humanity and the planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself.